Hello, my friends. This is part two in a two-part series on astrology and spirituality, how they are closely related. And now I'm going to review some basic concepts of what astrology is, specifically vibrational astrology, also known as cosmic cybernetics, also known as vibrational cosmobiology. Sometimes it's called cosmobiology for short. Goes under several names, but let's review some fundamental principles of vibrational astrology, and then we're going to see some additional ways in which the vibrational astrology and spirituality are saying the same thing, different pieces of the puzzle, all completely consistent. So this is wonderful that we have spiritual philosophy, astrology, and science all consistent. No contradictions, no conflicts, all integrated together. Okay, so vibrational astrology. Some basic principles. Number one, what is astrology? It is not an archetypal language, according to this theoretical framework. Archetypes are important, they're very powerful, but they're born out of our experiences and the astrology and our biology, etc., and our ancestry and so on. They're born out of that. They're extremely powerful. They're very important. The fact they're powerful and important does not mean that astrology works essentially as an archetypal language. Astrology is forces with specific purposes. So, for example, each planet has a function, a purpose. So in vibrational astrology, we do not look at Venus as the archetype of beauty. We look at Venus as the attractive power of beauty. It's a force. Mars is not a warrior. Mars is a force to accomplish, to achieve. Everything is a force. Jupiter is a force to expand. Out of these simple functions, complexity is born. Just like all Western music is made of only 12 notes in different octaves, out of which all Western music is created. All of it. It's unbelievable how from simple principles, huge complexity can be born, and that's exactly how we understand vibrational astrology. Each force is a force with a purpose. Number two, these forces interact in vibrational patterns. So vibrational patterns are created out of these forces, the aspect patterns, the interactions, the symmetries. The forces interact in complex and beautiful and intricate ways, and they create these vibrational patterns. This is what astrology is. It's what is actually happening according to this theoretical framework. Remember that this theoretical framework has produced the first comprehensive evidence-based astrology in existence. Hopefully other systems of astrology begin to do the same and develop a comprehensive, clear, evidence-based system. So it's successful that. It's also successful in integrating beautifully, seamlessly with modern science and with spiritual philosophy. Number three, these forces of the planets interacting in these complex ways, they function within an environment, within a context. What is that context? What is that environment? It's an environment created by a geometry that is born out of the essential nature of things. It is the environment of the zodiac signs, the houses, the nakshatras, and other things that are created out of spin, out of Fibonacci numbers embedded in spin. Also prime numbers create the zodiac and other structures in space. So astrology is a study of forces and structures in space that are born right out of the fundamental essence of what life is. Out of fundamentals like spin. Number four, in our theoretical framework for understanding what astrology is, and we see how closely integrated and connected and consistent it is with spiritual philosophy, is that behavior, a person's personality, and the archetypal stories that are part of a person's life are born out of the interaction of these astrological forces with the circumstances of our lives and the decisions we make. So the stories evolve and develop through this interaction, which makes sense. And again, this theory of how astrology works, of how vibrational astrology works, is consistent with the only fully developed evidence-based system of astrology and helps explain many things. The reason we have theories in science, well, number one, we're curious, but there's a tangible, practical benefit. Once you have a theory, and if the theory is correct, it helps you make new discoveries. And it helps explain why certain things exist. From this theory, we can see why some predictive techniques work, like what astrologers call secondary progressions. They are a natural consequence of the way astrology works. Oh my God, how beautiful is that? Something like secondary progressions, a rather mysterious predictive technique, is no longer mysterious. Once you understand how astrology works, secondary progressions are a natural consequence. I will talk more about that. So, the Fibonacci numbers, as I mentioned, are embedded in spin, and spin is a fundamental property of subatomic particles. I want to go back to that and show you something before we continue. Here's a table. I give this the website address of this table of protons, neutrons, and electrons. They have a charge. It's given here as an electronic charge value and an atomic charge. So they have a charge. They have a mass, which is presented in two different ways in these two columns, and spin. These three fundamental qualities of charge, mass, and spin. I just wanted to show you that when I say the subatomic particles, as I mentioned in the first video in this series of videos, have spin, it is one of the very few fundamental, essential qualities of the subatomic particles. And spin is repeated at the higher levels. The Earth has its two kinds of spin. The Sun and the whole galaxy spinning around the galactic center. It's operating at all these different levels. And so what we're seeing here is that vibrational astrology, we can also call it cosmic cybernetics, as it says on the slide, is the study of this prism. And I've already talked about this, how the zodiac is created out of spin. So the Earth rotates on its axis. That's a form of spin. The Earth revolves around the Sun. That's a form of spin. The solar system is spinning. I've got a typo here. It's supposed to say the solar system is spinning around the galactic center. That's spin. Subatomic particles have spin. Everything is like a whirling dervish. All this stuff spinning around. And dimension reduction, just to make this a little bit clearer, I referred to it earlier, I think in the first video in this series. The entire sphere collapses into 5 great circles: the ecliptic plane, celestial equator, horizon plane, meridian plane, prime vertical, and where these great circles intersect creates the beginning of the tropical zodiac and the beginning of the houses. All of this is described in more detail, in tremendous detail in other videos. But what I want to get to now, I just wanted to review some basic things. But I want to talk about the secondary progressions. And here's how our theory tells us that secondary progressions are something we would expect to exist, because secondary progression is based on the idea that one day after birth is lived out as a year of life. As we say in astrology, a day equals a year. Well, think about it. With this understanding from physics that the spin of the Earth, what's the term I'm looking for? Well, anyway, I'll just call it the spin of the Earth. For some reason, it's slipping my mind right now. Angular momentum. Couldn't think of it. that the angular momentum, another more precise word for spin, of the Earth is divided into two things: rotation on its axis and revolution around the sun, according to physicists. Well, again, if we add one more reasonable thought that those two forms of angular momentum of the Earth are in some kind of relation or resonance with each other, that's not such a wild step. Then a day equals a year. Or more specifically, the day is resonating to the year. There's some kind of resonance. And then you have the predictive technique. Amazing that astrology has so many rules that are consistent with physics, if we just add a little bit of additional ideas. So this is the beauty of theory. The beauty of theory is it helps us make new discoveries. It helps us understand why things are working. Also, understanding that secondary progressions exist because of a resonance of the two kinds of angular momentum of the Earth gives us a hint as to how we should measure it. And there's something called the Bija correction. I've got a refinement of it. I call the anomalistic correction. I describe all this in other videos on secondary progressions. Again, I've made over 650 videos, and I describe why we should be using the Bija correction or the anomalistic correction for our progressions. Otherwise, particularly for older people, the timing of the progressed moon is off a little bit. These are the kinds of benefits you get from understanding how things work. You can see what we expect to happen based on that. Then our observations confirm it. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful that all of this comes together. Spiritual philosophy, science, astrology, all together. So a summary of some key points. Again, each planet is a force. What does Venus do? I've mentioned this. It regulates our attraction to beauty. It directs and regulates our attraction to beauty. Mars directs and regulates our desire to accomplish. Jupiter directs and regulates the process of expansion. Venus is not an archetype of beauty and aesthetics. Archetypes are born out of the interaction of the cosmic, cybernetic forces, our consciousness and our experiences. Archetypes are indeed very powerful. However, the fact that the archetypes are very powerful and important does not necessarily mean that astrology is fundamentally and essentially archetypal. I'm repeating this. I gave a whole slide to it because it's important. So I'm repeating a few things that I've mentioned earlier. Some of this I've either in the first part of this series of videos or here in the second part. And what is a zodiac sign? What is a zodiac sign? We have a clear idea. It's like a lens that directs our attention. Aries directs our attention to what is honest and essential. Taurus directs our attention and energy to unfold organically. Taurus does not like rich food, as people would say, or is materialistic. That is not what Taurus is. Taurus is a force. It is a way the energy moves. And there are some common symptoms. Is Taurus stubborn? Very often, Taurus will be stubborn as a symptom of the process. That's why when you're looking at the symptoms of the process, they don't always work. And astrologers say, well, it's multivalent, you got to guess this, guess that. But if you look at what the actual force is, that's always true. So these are real big breakthroughs in understanding how astrology works. And in this video, I'm emphasizing how astrology is perfectly consistent with spiritual philosophy. And I'll talk more about that. So what is astrology? Is it archetypal? Is it a superstition? Is it a science? Is it a spiritual science? Is it a psychological language? What is it? According to the Vibrational Astrology theoretical framework, astrology is a science. It's a science in a very, very early stage of development. And note, the word science, for many astrologers that I've talked to, is a deadly word. Like, oh, it's mechanical, it's Newtonian, they call it. Oh, it's, it kills the soul and spirit. Well, from the viewpoint of vibrational astrology, none of that is true. Science can be spiritual. It can be soulful. That can sound like a contradiction if you're used to dividing things up into boring analytical logic, and you think that's what science is, and intuition and inspiration, and you think these are two separate worlds. Well, then you can see problems. But from the point of view of vibrational astrology, they're not two separate worlds. And science isn't all about just logic. And art and music and stuff requires a lot of logic and attention to detail. They're really not that different. So the conclusion. Vibrational astrology shows the forces seeking expression through us from a higher dimensional source. So I've added some new things here. It comes from a higher dimensional space, and from the source, the pure oneness. It's like a prism that becomes variegated, spreads out into the dance of life, and that pure energy is seeking expression. So what does vibrational astrology do for us? Can it be like a crystal ball and just tell me what I am? No. But it can tell you what you're likely to be. But more importantly, I'm going to read from this slide, vibrational astrology helps us find our calling. Every person has a calling. Every person is like a snowflake, configured in a unique way. And what the vibrational astrology shows you is what that imprint is, what that original formation is that's seeking expression, regardless of where you're born, regardless of anything. There's some purpose, some function, some way that you were formed that is close to the source. It's like a cosmic genetic code. You have a physical genetic code, you have a cosmic genetic code. So let me read this again. Vibrational astrology helps us find our calling, to be aware of and activate our greatest potentials. Astrology gives us choices, and there is not just one way to creatively express your potential. Excuse me. When you do the vibrational astrology analysis, you see many different motivations. I think we'll need some water here. Many different motivations, many different things that you are drawn to. And this is obvious. Excuse me. You might have an interest in psychology, in painting, in different things. Maybe you're athletic. Maybe you're not athletic. We all are drawn to different things. There are different ways that we can orchestrate and conduct ourselves. But there are a limited number of choices. You're not going to change your height. If you're 5'10", you're not going to be 5'4" tomorrow. There are certain constraints. There are certain things that need to be. Those constraints are good. A rose does not need to be a lily. They're both beautiful. You are built a certain way, and you have a lot of choices within the context of your life. And the vibrational astrology shows you what those choices are. And with the vibrational astrologer, you can creatively come up with a plan, a strategy, a way that works. So you have creative choices. Life is a creative process. With the tools we have, with the motivations we have, with the purpose and the calling, each person actually does have a calling. We are not just placed here randomly with just random experiences. You come into life with a kind of sacred geometry that's unique to you. So astrology helps us connect to the unique way that we are configured and help us express our unique gifts. So we see the connection of astrology to spirituality, that we are here in life to play a particular role, with a particular mission, with a particular set of potentials. And there are a lot of different ways in which we can put that together, and we can make decisions, and we can develop our own values. In fact, we have to do that. But like I said before, if you're 5'10", you will not be 5'4" tomorrow, or vice versa. So it shows you what that blueprint is, and then you can decide how you want to creatively develop that potential. So the astrology is, you might say, close to the source in terms of showing what specific expression. And the philosophical assumption of vibrational astrology is that our lives are important. My life is important. Your life is important. We have a calling, we have a purpose, and the astrology is showing that blueprint from the higher dimensional space. So we see the close connection of spiritual concepts, scientific ideas, basic humanity, all coming together in vibrational astrology, where science, mysticism, art, psychology are all aspects of the one thing that we are engaged in vibrational astrology. I believe that may be my last slide. It is. If you're a member, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Membership is a voluntary thing. You can donate $5 or $10 a month to help support this work. I appreciate it so much. There's a little join button if you're not a member that you'll see on the YouTube channel page. If you don't see it, you're probably on an iPhone using the YouTube app. If you go to the browser on your iPhone, you'll see the join button. And if you are not in a position or don't feel motivated to donate as a member, you can still become a subscriber. That's free, and that helps as well. So I appreciate any support that you give to this work. It helps me keep doing this. And we are at good timing. We're at about 23 minutes, and we had the first video, which is a little over a half hour. So that's it, my friends. Astrology and spirituality. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Namaste.